The Greys. The Greys are the face of alien contact in modern human consciousness, and their appearance has remained disturbingly consistent across thousands of reported encounters spanning 7 decades. Standing roughly 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall, they possess disproportionately large heads with smooth gray skin that appears almost translucent under certain lighting conditions. Their most distinctive feature is their eyes, massive black almond-shaped voids that occupy nearly a third of their skull, with no visible iris, pupil, or white. Witnesses describe these eyes as completely emotionless, yet somehow intensely observing, absorbing every detail with an intelligence that feels both advanced and utterly alien to human experience. The Greys possess virtually no nose, only small nostril slits, and their mouths are typically described as thin lines that rarely open and never speak, communicating instead through direct telepathic projection into the minds of those they encounter. Their bodies are frail and spindly, with long, thin arms ending in 3 or 4 fingers, and they move with an unsettling fluid grace that suggests either advanced technology compensating for physical weakness or a fundamentally different relationship with gravity. The first widely publicized encounter occurred in 1961 when Betty and Barney Hill reported being taken aboard a craft in New Hampshire and subjected to medical examination by beings matching this exact description. Since then, the Greys have appeared in abduction accounts from Brazil to Japan, from Australia to Scandinavia, with witnesses who have never met describing identical details down to the texture of their skin and the cold, clinical efficiency of their examinations. They are associated primarily with medical experimentation, genetic sampling, and what abductees describe as a breeding program, though their ultimate purpose remains as opaque as their black eyes. The consistency of description across cultures and decades suggests either a genuine phenomenon or the most successful mass psychological imprint in human history. The Reptilians. The reptilians exist at the intersection of ancient mythology and modern conspiracy, described as a humanoid species with distinctly reptilian features that allegedly operates in the shadows of human civilization and has done so for thousands of years. Standing between 6 and 8 feet tall, they possess scaly skin in shades of green, brown, or occasionally gold, with vertical slit pupils identical to those of Earth's reptiles. Their faces combine human and serpentine characteristics, with prominent brow ridges, sharp angular cheekbones, and mouths that can unhinge slightly wider than human anatomy allows, revealing rows of sharp pointed teeth. Some accounts describe them as possessing small ridges or crests along their skulls and spines, while others report completely smooth, scaled heads. Unlike the Greys, reptilians are described as physically powerful, muscular, and aggressive, with some witnesses claiming they possess the ability to shapeshift or project holographic disguises to move undetected among humans. The modern reptilian hypothesis was popularized in the 1990s by conspiracy theorists who claim these beings occupy positions of power within governments, corporations, and religious institutions, secretly manipulating human affairs toward unknown ends.
However, the concept of reptilian humanoids appears much earlier in human mythology, from the Naga serpent beings of Hindu and Buddhist tradition dating back over 2,000 years, to the dragon kings of Chinese folklore, to the serpent in the Garden of Eden itself. Accounts describe reptilians as cold-blooded in both physiology and temperament, operating with ruthless logic and viewing humans as either resources to be exploited or livestock to be managed. Unlike the Greys, who are reported as emotionless but not malicious, reptilians are consistently described as deliberately hostile, supremacist, and contemptuous of human life. Whether they represent suppressed ancestral memory of a predecessor species, interdimensional entities, or psychological projection of humanity's predatory fears remains a matter of intense debate.
The Nordics. The Nordics appear as the most unsettling type of alien, precisely because they look almost exactly like humans, specifically humans of Northern European descent, and this similarity raises questions far more disturbing than monsters ever could. Described as standing between 6 and 7 feet tall, they possess perfect symmetrical features, flawless pale skin, platinum blonde or white hair, and brilliant blue or occasionally green eyes that witnesses describe as containing an otherworldly depth and clarity. Both male and female Nordics are reported as strikingly beautiful by conventional human standards, athletic and graceful in movement, and typically wearing simple form-fitting jumpsuits in white, silver, or pale blue. Unlike the clinical greys or hostile reptilians, Nordics are consistently described as benevolent, communicating in perfect unaccented English or the native language of the contactee, often delivering messages about nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, and humanity's need for spiritual evolution. The first major Nordic contact case occurred in 1952, when George Adamski claimed to have met a being named Orthon in the California desert who warned him about atomic testing, a case that established the template for hundreds of subsequent Nordic encounters.
The disturbing element is not their message but their appearance, because if an advanced extraterrestrial species coincidentally evolved to look exactly like idealized humans, the statistical improbability approaches impossibility. This has led to several competing theories. Some researchers suggest Nordics are actually human, either time travelers from our future or survivors of an advanced ancient civilization. Others propose they are deliberately mimicking human appearance to ease contact anxiety. The darkest interpretation suggests they are neither benevolent nor alien, but psychological operations conducted by human intelligence agencies, using perfectly ordinary tall blonde individuals to discredit genuine alien contact by association with obviously fabricated cases. What remains consistent across reports is their almost evangelical insistence on delivering warnings and spiritual guidance, behavior that seems strangely human for beings supposedly from another world.
The insectoids. The insectoids represent humanity's nightmare of the hive, alien beings whose appearance and behavior suggests a completely non-human psychology organized around collective consciousness rather than individual identity. Described as standing between 5 and 7 feet tall, they possess hard chitinous exoskeletons in dark brown, black, or occasionally iridescent green, with elongated heads dominated by large, multifaceted compound eyes that curve around the sides of their skulls. Their mouths consist of complex mandibles that move independently, and some reports describe them possessing additional smaller limbs or appendages near their upper torso. Most distinctively, insectoids move with insect-like jerking motions, sudden and angular rather than fluid, as if their neurology operates on fundamentally different timing than mammalian movement. Witnesses describe them as completely silent, communicating through what abductees interpret as hive mind broadcasts rather than individual telepathy, experiencing entire groups of insectoids as a single distributed intelligence. The most famous insectoid encounter occurred in 1973 in Pascagoula, Mississippi, when Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker reported being taken aboard a craft by beings they described as robotic in movement, with crab-like claws and wrinkled gray elephant-like skin, though later analysis suggested the wrinkled appearance may have been a misperception of segmented exoskeleton.
Subsequent reports refined the description toward more explicitly insect-like features, particularly resembling praying mantises, leading to the subcategory known as mantids. These beings are associated with the Greys in many abduction accounts, with witnesses describing insectoids as overseers or supervisors directing the Greys' medical procedures. The horror of insectoid encounters stems not from hostility, but from their complete incomprehensibility, beings whose consciousness is so alien that communication feels less like conversation, but more like being processed by a vast, indifferent intelligence that regards individual humans the way we regard individual cells.
The tall whites. The tall whites emerged from the testimony of a single witness, former U.S. Air Force weatherman Charles Hall, who claimed to have had extensive contact with them at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada during the 1960s, and the specific detail of his accounts has made them impossible to easily dismiss. Described as standing between 6 and 9 feet tall, with chalk white skin, large blue eyes, and nearly translucent white blonde hair, they age in reverse of human appearance, with their young looking elderly, and their elderly developing an almost luminescent quality to their skin. Hall described them as possessing exceptionally fragile bones that shatter easily, requiring them to wear protective aluminized suits when interacting with humans whose casual touch could seriously injure them. Despite this physical vulnerability, tall whites are described as having extremely volatile temperaments, capable of killing humans with handheld energy weapons if startled or disrespected, and Hall claimed that several military personnel died in accidental confrontations with them. According to his account, tall whites have maintained a formal diplomatic relationship with elements of the U.S. military since at least the 1950s, providing limited technological assistance in exchange for permission to use remote desert facilities for purposes Hall was never fully briefed on.
They live in underground facilities, speak English fluently, and apparently find humans both useful and primitively amusing, treating military personnel the way we might treat clever but unpredictable animals. The tall whites reportedly have a longer lifespan than humans, with Hall estimating individuals could live 600 to 800 years. And they maintain family structures recognizable to humans, traveling with spouses and children. What separates tall white accounts from other alien types is the mundane specificity, Hall's descriptions of their daily routines, their preferences for certain foods, their frustration with human incompetence, their concern for their children's safety around humans, details that suggest either genuine observation or an extraordinarily elaborate fiction.
The Blue Avians. The Blue Avians represent the most recent addition to alien typology, emerging primarily from the testimony of Corey Goode beginning in 2015, and they challenge every assumption about what aliens should look or act like. Described as 8-foot-tall humanoid birds with bright blue or indigo feathers covering their bodies, they possess bird-like heads with large expressive eyes, small beaks, and 3-fingered hands with opposable thumbs. Unlike the clinical grays or the volatile tall whites, Blue Avians are described as profoundly peaceful, highly spiritual, and operating as advisors or guides to other alien species and certain human secret space program personnel. According to Goode's testimony, they are representatives of a group called the Sphere Being Alliance, sixth-density beings who exist partially outside linear time and have returned to our solar system to assist humanity through a consciousness transformation event. They communicate exclusively through telepathy, transmitting not just information, but emotional states and ethical concepts directly into the minds of those they contact, a form of communication Goode describes as overwhelming in its clarity and compassion. The Blue Avians allegedly maintain a strict non-interference policy, refusing to provide technology or solve humanity's problems directly, instead offering guidance that emphasizes personal spiritual development, forgiveness, and service to others.
The appearance of bird-like aliens is not entirely new. Ancient Egyptian depictions of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, present striking visual parallels, and various indigenous traditions describe bird people or sky beings. But the Blue Avians, as described, represent something more specific, beings whose entire presence is designed to communicate transcendence of physical materialism. Skeptics point out that the Blue Avians have never appeared in traditional abduction scenarios and exist solely within the testimonies of individuals involved in fringe disclosure movements. While believers argue this is precisely because they represent a fundamentally different level of contact, invitation-based rather than forcible, consciousness-based rather than physical.
The Abans. The Abans are the aliens of the Zeta Reticuli system, and if the leaked documents known as the Serpo material are genuine, they represent the only confirmed case of human astronauts living on an alien planet for an extended period. Described as similar to greys but slightly taller at around 5 feet, with beige or tan skin rather than gray, and slightly more proportional heads, the Abans allegedly made formal diplomatic contact with the United States government following the Roswell incident in 1947. According to the Serpo documents released anonymously in 2005, 12 U.S. military personnel were selected for a diplomatic exchange program and traveled to the Aban home planet Serpo in the Zeta Reticuli system in 1965, remaining there for 13 years before 8 survivors returned to Earth. The planet was described as orbiting a binary star system with constant daylight, requiring the human team to live in artificially darkened shelters. The Abans themselves were described as an entirely peaceful species with no concept of money, crime, or war, living in a highly organized collective society where individual roles were predetermined and unquestioned. They reproduced through cloning rather than sexual reproduction and viewed the human team with a mixture of scientific curiosity and genuine compassion, though cultural misunderstandings were frequent and sometimes fatal.
The returned astronauts allegedly described Aban technology as based on principles of consciousness interaction with matter, and Aban history revealed they had visited Earth for thousands of years, observing human development and occasionally intervening in subtle ways. The Serpo material is either one of the most significant disclosures in human history or an elaborate disinformation campaign, and no definitive evidence has emerged to confirm or refute it. What makes the Ebens conceptually significant is they represent first contact not as invasion, abduction, or spiritual awakening, but as actual diplomatic exchange between civilizations, with all the mundane complications that implies.
The Anunnaki. The Anunnaki occupy the uncertain territory between alien and God, ancient astronaut and mythology, described in ancient Sumerian texts as beings who came from the sky and are now claimed by various researchers to have been extraterrestrial genetic engineers who created or modified Homo sapiens. The name translates roughly as those who came from heaven to earth, and in original Sumerian cosmology, they were deities associated with the earth and underworld, subordinate to the sky god Anu. In tablets like the Atrahasis and Enuma Elish, dating back over 4,000 years, the Anunnaki are described as creating humans to serve as workers, mining gold and performing labor the Anunnaki themselves refuse to do. Modern ancient astronaut interpretations, particularly those popularized by Zecharia Sitchin beginning in the 1970s, propose that these texts are not mythology, but historical records of extraterrestrial contact, with the Anunnaki described as a race of tall humanoid beings from a planet called Nibiru, who genetically modified early hominids to create modern humans as a slave species. According to these interpretations, the Anunnaki required gold for atmospheric purposes on their home planet, established mining operations on Earth approximately 450,000 years ago, and when their workforce of lesser Anunnaki rebelled, they created humans through genetic manipulation to replace them.
Various researchers claim the Anunnaki established themselves as the gods of ancient civilizations, with Sumerian deities like Enlil, Enki, and Inanna actually being individual Anunnaki commanders and scientists. They allegedly departed Earth following a catastrophic flood, but promised to return, and some conspiracy theories suggest they have already returned and operate through secret societies and bloodline families that descend from Anunnaki human hybrids. Academic scholars categorically reject the ancient astronaut interpretation, pointing to mistranslations, misunderstandings of Sumerian grammar, and the absence of any archaeological evidence of advanced technology in ancient Mesopotamia. Yet the question remains disturbing. If the Anunnaki were simply mythological gods, why are their descriptions so specific, so technological, so focused on genetics, mining, and engineering, rather than abstract spiritual concepts?
The small grays, or Zeta Reticulans. The small grays, often called Zeta Reticulans after their alleged star system of origin, are the workers of the alien hierarchy, shorter than their gray counterparts at roughly 3 to 4 feet tall, and witnesses describe them as operating with programmed behavior rather than independent intelligence. They appear almost identical to standard grays, but smaller, with proportionally even larger heads that seem barely supported by their thin necks, and their movements are described as more mechanical, more insect-like, leading some researchers to propose they are biological robots or cloned entities rather than a true species. In abduction scenarios, small grays are reported as conducting the actual physical procedures, extracting samples, performing examinations, and operating equipment under the apparent supervision of taller grays or other alien types. Witnesses describe them as having almost no individual personality, never communicating directly, and showing no reaction to human distress beyond clinical observation. The most disturbing aspect of small gray encounters is the growing consensus among abduction researchers that these beings may not be alive in the way we understand life, but rather grown biological technology, artificial beings created for specific functions and then disposed of when no longer needed.
This interpretation is supported by testimony from alleged military insiders who claim that crashed alien craft sometimes contain dozens of small gray bodies stored in containment units, suggesting they are manufactured in batches and deployed as needed. The small gray's alleged origin in the Zeta Reticuli star system, approximately 39 light-years from Earth, comes from the famous Betty Hill star map drawn under hypnosis in 1964, where she claimed to have been shown a three-dimensional holographic map indicating the gray home world and trade routes. Astronomer Marjorie Fish later identified a pattern of stars matching Hill's drawing, with Zeta Reticuli as the point of origin, though skeptics argue the match is coincidental and the interpretation forced. Whether small grays are degraded biological entities, purpose-built organic machines, or a genuinely diminutive alien species, they represent contact at its most dehumanizing, beings who treat humans as specimens with the emotional investment of a laboratory technician handling bacterial cultures.
The Alpha Draconians. The Alpha Draconians are described as the ultimate hostile alien species, allegedly originating from the Alpha Draconis star system and representing a conquering empire that has subjugated hundreds of worlds, including, according to some accounts, partially subjugating Earth through proxy species and human collaborators. Standing between 7 and 18 feet tall, depending on caste, they are described as winged reptilian humanoids with horned or crested heads, powerful tails, and scale colors ranging from brown and green to red and white, with the white-scaled draconians allegedly representing a royal bloodline. Unlike terrestrial reptilians who are described as infiltrators and manipulators, Alpha Draconians are portrayed as open conquerors who view other species as inherently inferior and destined for domination. They allegedly possess advanced psychic abilities, including the power to project fear directly into the minds of other beings, paralyzing resistance before physical conflict even begins. According to contactee Alex Collier and others, the Draconians have been in conflict with more benevolent alien species for thousands of years, with Earth serving as a contested territory where Draconian influence operates through the reptilians, the Greys serving as middle management, and certain human bloodlines and secret societies serving as willing collaborators in exchange for technology and power.
The Draconian hierarchy is described as rigidly structured, with lower castes serving as warriors and workers, while upper castes function as commanders and priests, and the entire species is unified by a philosophy of conquest and genetic supremacy. They are said to feed on negative emotional energy, particularly fear and suffering, deliberately engineering conflicts and atrocities on conquered worlds to harvest this energy. The Alpha Draconian narrative exists almost entirely within conspiracy and contactee testimony, with no physical evidence, yet the archetype of the dragon as humanity's ultimate enemy appears across virtually every ancient culture, from Europe to Asia to the Americas, serpent beings associated with chaos, destruction, and the underworld. Whether the Draconians are literal aliens, archetypal projections of humanity's shadow self, or deliberate disinformation designed to create fear-based thinking, they represent the darkest possible interpretation of the alien presence.
Demantids, or mantis beings. Demantids are perhaps the most alien aliens, beings whose appearance and behavior are so far removed from mammalian psychology that witnesses struggle to even process the encounters as real experiences. Standing between 5 and 7 feet tall, they possess elongated triangular heads, large wraparound compound eyes that shift colors from gold to green, thin bodies with multiple joints, and long, delicate limbs that fold in ways human anatomy cannot replicate. They move with the precise, calculated motion of praying mantises, their heads tilting and rotating with insect smoothness, and their communication is described not as telepathy in the conventional sense, but as direct information transfer, entire concepts appearing fully formed in the contactee's mind, without language as an intermediate step. Witnesses consistently describe mantids as the highest authority in abduction scenarios, standing in the background while Greys perform procedures, occasionally stepping forward to intervene or communicate directly with the abductee. The communication is almost always described as deeply compassionate, not in an emotional way, but in a vast, impersonal way, the way a biologist might feel compassion for an endangered species while still conducting necessary research.
Mantids are associated with genetic programs, spiritual instruction, and what abductees describe as soul contracts, pre-incarnation agreements that the abductee allegedly made before birth to participate in hybrid breeding programs. The presence of a mantid in an abduction experience transforms the event from traumatic medical procedure to something closer to shamanic initiation, with witnesses reporting that the mantid's gaze seems to see through multiple timelines simultaneously, perceiving the abductee's past lives, future possibilities, and current incarnation purpose all at once. Some researchers propose that mantids are not extraterrestrial but interdimensional, existing partially outside our space-time and appearing physical only through tremendous effort. The praying mantis appears in various spiritual traditions as a symbol of stillness, patience, and predatory precision. An ancient Egyptian art occasionally depicts gods with distinctly insect-like characteristics, suggesting the mantid presence in human consciousness may extend back thousands of years.
The Pleiadians. The Pleiadians claim to be humanity's spiritual ancestors, human-looking aliens from the Pleiades star cluster who allegedly seeded Earth with human genetics hundreds of thousands of years ago and have returned to guide their genetic descendants through a cosmic awakening. Described as indistinguishable from attractive northern European humans standing between 5.5 and 7 feet tall with light hair, blue or green eyes, and an almost luminous quality to their skin, Pleiadians are consistently portrayed as benevolent, spiritually advanced, and deeply concerned with human evolution. The Pleiadian contact movement began primarily in the 1970s with contactees like Billy Meyer, who claimed ongoing communication with beings named Semyase and Ptaah, providing photographs of their craft and extensive philosophical teachings. Unlike the warning-focused Nordics or the scientific Greys, Pleiadians allegedly communicate primarily to provide spiritual guidance, emphasizing meditation, compassion, environmental stewardship, and the understanding that humans are immortal spiritual beings temporarily inhabiting physical bodies. They describe their own civilization as having transcended war, poverty, and disease thousands of years ago through collective spiritual development, and they claim Earth is currently undergoing a similar transition that will either elevate humanity to galactic citizenship or result in self-destruction.
The Pleiadians allegedly cannot intervene directly due to cosmic laws of non-interference, but can offer information and energy to those who choose to listen. Skeptics point out that the Pleiades star cluster is only about 100 million years old, likely too young for advanced civilizations to have evolved, and that Pleiadian messages often sound indistinguishable from New Age philosophy that was already popular when the contacts began. Believers counter that Pleiadians are not from planets in the Pleiades, but from higher dimensional realities associated with that star cluster, making conventional astrophysics irrelevant. The Pleiades hold special significance in dozens of ancient cultures, from the Aboriginal Australians to the Aztecs to the Japanese, all of whom identified it as the origin point of either gods or ancestors, suggesting that whether Pleiadians are real aliens or archetypal symbols, they tap into something ancient in human consciousness.
The Sirians. The Sirians are the ancient teachers, allegedly originating from the Sirius star system and associated with the founding of human civilization, particularly ancient Egypt, where Sirius held profound religious and astronomical significance. Described as appearing in multiple forms, including humanoid, aquatic or amphibian, and occasionally feline or canine, the Sirians allegedly made extensive contact with ancient human civilizations, providing knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and spiritual practices. The Dogon tribe of Mali possess astronomical knowledge about Sirius B, a white dwarf companion star invisible to the naked eye, that was not confirmed by Western astronomy until the 20th century, claiming this knowledge was provided by amphibious beings called the Nomo, who came from Sirius in ancient times. In modern contact accounts, Sirians appear as tall blue-skinned humanoids or occasionally as beings with distinctly aquatic features, including gill-like structures and webbed fingers, and they are consistently described as ancient, wise, and operating with cosmic perspective that views humanity as one young species among thousands. According to various channeled sources and contactee testimony, Sirians have been involved in human development for hundreds of thousands of years, sometimes working in cooperation with Pleiadians and sometimes in complex political relationships with less benevolent species.
They are associated with the construction of the Great Pyramid, the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in Sumerian civilization, and the mysteriously advanced astronomical knowledge present in various ancient cultures. Sirians allegedly view Earth as a library of genetic diversity and a critical experiment in free will, making the planet valuable to multiple alien factions for different reasons. The ancient Egyptian emphasis on Sirius, which they called Sabdet, as the most important star in the sky, with the entire calendar synchronized to its heliacal rising and temple architecture aligned to its appearance, suggests either alien contact or a coincidence so profound it demands explanation.
The Arcturians. The Arcturians are described as fifth-dimensional healers and spiritual guides from the Arcturus star system, appearing when called by individuals seeking healing, spiritual development, or assistance transitioning between incarnations. Unlike physical aliens who arrive in spacecraft, Arcturians are reported as manifesting through consciousness, appearing as beings of light in colors ranging from blue to violet to green, sometimes coalescing into vaguely humanoid forms between 3 and 5 feet tall, with large heads and penetrating eyes, sometimes remaining as geometric patterns of living light. Contactees describe Arcturian energy as intensely healing, transforming, and unconditionally loving, working directly on the energetic and spiritual bodies rather than the physical form.
According to Edgar Cayce and other sources, Arcturians are among the most spiritually advanced beings in the galaxy, having transcended physical form millions of years ago, but choosing to maintain connection with physical reality to assist less developed species. They allegedly operate healing ships in higher dimensions, where souls go between incarnations to repair damage from traumatic lifetimes, and they are said to be deeply involved in the current planetary ascension process, working to raise Earth's vibrational frequency.
The Arcturian contact experience is fundamentally different from abduction, described not as being taken but as being invited, not as medical procedure but as energetic recalibration, and witnesses report feeling profound peace rather than fear. Arcturus is one of the brightest stars visible from Earth and has appeared in mythology across cultures, from ancient Greece where it was associated with the god Hermes to Hawaiian tradition where it represented a pathway for souls. Some researchers propose that Arcturians are not aliens, but angelic beings using alien terminology to reach people who would reject religious language, while believers insist they are genuinely extraterrestrial, but so advanced that the distinction between alien and angel becomes meaningless.
The Orange. The Orange remains one of the strangest and least discussed alien types, appearing primarily in abduction accounts from the 1980s and 1990s, as short beings with orange-tinted skin, large dark eyes, and an unsettling quality that witnesses struggle to articulate. Standing roughly 4 feet tall, they are described as similar to greys in general body structure, but with orange or reddish-brown skin that appears almost dirty or malnourished, and their behavior is reported as more erratic, more emotionally volatile than the clinical greys. Witnesses describe orange aliens as appearing sick or deteriorating, moving with less precision than other alien types, and exuding an atmosphere of desperation rather than clinical detachment or benevolent guidance. In the few detailed accounts available, orange beings are described as operating under the supervision of greys or reptilians, performing menial tasks aboard craft, and showing visible fear of their supervisors. Some abduction researchers have proposed that orange aliens are a dying species, possibly the original greys before genetic degradation, or biological constructs that have exceeded their designed lifespan and are breaking down. The most disturbing interpretation suggests they are human-alien hybrids from early failed experiments, explaining their emotional volatility as a consequence of combining alien genetics with human psychological patterns.
Unlike other alien types that appear consistently across decades of reports, orange encounters seem to cluster in a specific time period and then largely disappeared, leading to speculation that they were a temporary workforce that was either used up and disposed of or successfully integrated into the gray collective. The orange serve as a reminder that the alien presence, if real, is likely far more complex than simple categories suggest, with multiple species, factions, artificial beings, and hybrids, creating a situation too layered for human understanding to fully map.